Okay. Thank you all for coming. Major Alexander Bates and Major Daniel Colgan from the United States Military Academy at West Point are presenting today on modeling real-world systems with differential equations through project-based learning.
All right, thank you, Gavin. Yeah, my name is Major Alexander Bates. My co-author is Major Daniel Colgan. We're going to talk to you guys today about kind of what we do at West Point to model the real-world systems with differential equations. We primarily use projects as our avenue to do that, and so we'll talk a little bit about our process today. Okay. So the agenda that we have for today, I'll go through kind of the core mathematics program we have here at the Academy. I'll also talk about some of the differential equations course framework. I'll also talk about some of the foundations of mathematical modeling, some of the challenges we've experienced, and the motivation behind it all. So our traditional mathematics pipeline, we have college freshmen who begin their career with pre-calculus, calculus courses, and they move through this at a regular intervals each semester, taking another course. But we have to ask the question, where does the math modeling begin? Do they see it in electives? Do they see it as they move to major coursework? Where do they have the chance to use mathematical modeling? So at USMA, we take a different approach. We have a core mathematics requirement for all cadets. It's a 3-course sequence that all cadets have to take while they're here. We have 1 semester of math modeling, 1 semester of calculus, and 1 semester of probability and statistics. So we have 2 pathways. We have the standard pathway that most cadets take. They start off modeling with linear optimization, and they move into calculus, then probability and statistics. If they're going to be a STEM major, then they'll also take multivariable calculus. On our advanced program, we start them off modeling with ordinary differential equations. Then we move them into multivariable calculus, and then they take probability and statistics. So we'll talk a little bit about what makes cadets a good candidate for our advanced math track. So the advanced math program here at West Point is often called the JEDI program. We use a combination of things to find our target population. We look at placement exams that we give to the cadets as they're applying to come to West Point. We analyze transcripts. We have cadets that come from other colleges, cadets that come from a variety of backgrounds in high school. And so we look at their transcripts, see if they've taken calculus and how they performed in that. We also look at their standardized testing, how well they perform in the SAT, how well they perform on their calculus AP IB exams. So our program demographic, our target population, is freshmen that have calculus experience and have also shown an aptitude for mathematics. Every cadet we pick up for the advanced math program has taken AP calculus. Their math averages are pretty high, and we enroll a significant number of cadets into this advanced math program. Our enrollment has been continuing to grow because as cadets have been coming to the Academy, we've seen that an increasing number of them have a calculus background from high school. And so we have an enrollment of over the quarter of the entire class of 2028 that came in this past year was enrolled in the advanced math program. So what do we do at West Point to get after this modeling? So we use board problems, and that's where cadets go and take a blackboard. They are able to practice problems that the instructors assign them, and this helps create interactive lectures and also has an important effect of keeping the cadets awake. We also use these things called modeling application days, or MADs, to help bridge class concepts with real-world applications that we'll talk about in a bit. Additionally, we also have an end-of-term project where students select and explore a topic of interest using the class materials that they learned and kind of culminate the semester by delivering something that's looked at by their peers and some of the superiors that they get to invite to come see their presentations. So how do we set up our differential equations course? Well, the first thing we do is we attack first order ODEs, kind of traditionally, and we introduce this idea of mathematical modeling here at the Academy. We also use tech labs and give them a modeling application day. Then we move to systems. We kind of further keep developing their skills using Mathematica and have a second modeling application day. Finally, we have higher order ODEs, And we use the spring mass system here to reinforce our modeling concepts. And then we culminate the semester with a term-end project. It allows them to take the class skills they've learned and implement it through a term-end project. So how do we execute the course? Well, we meet a total of 4 to 5 times a week for 55-minute classes, and we have an 18-week semester. We have small class sizes. Last semester, our cadets, we had 20 cadets max, and each instructor taught 2 to 3 sections. The average class size was about 18, so cadets get to benefit from a lot of instructor feedback. We also underlie our entire course with the USMA math modeling process. The USMA math modeling process is a process where we take a real-world problem and create a mathematical solution. It's a 3-step process, and it's iterative. The first thing cadets do, well, they'll identify the problem, and they'll transform it into a mathematical model. Next, they're going to solve that using the most appropriate techniques. Finally, they interpret their results of the mathematical solution and figure out how that applies to the real world. One of the things we asked them to focus on this semester was the ethical reasoning behind their models. Was their model a good fit? What are the implications if they got their model wrong? So the first thing we had them model was a cancer modeling project. We gave them a adaptation of a SIMIODE project from Zhu Wang, and we took the data from Chinese hamsters that explored the growth of a tumor. The first thing we had them do was fit an exponential growth model. And the cadets got to see that while exponential growth models it well to begin with, it does a bad job over the long term of modeling cancer growth. So we asked them to use the logistic growth model and adapt their model through the iterative process and see how that could make a better fit for their model. Next, we had the combat modeling application day. This was allowing them to use systems of differential equations, specifically the Lanchester equations, to model 2 opposing forces. We asked them to investigate a real-world operation called Operation Bulldog Bite, and the cadets were able to model that real-life conflict. We additionally broke them into different groups and asked them to adapt their problem to account for different elements. How could they expand it using Army aviation elements? How could they change it if they make it non-homogeneous and add an indirect fire component? And how could the enemy adding reinforcements throughout change the battle? The final thing we had cadets do was a term-end project. This is where the students got to choose their project and attempt to model a real-world event or behavior. They got to use models they learned throughout the class, and they got to explore a variety of topics, some of which are seen here. This culminated in a final report and a project presentation. So here is an example of one of the projects we got. These cadets decided to investigate Apple product sales, and they transformed the problem into a math model. They solved it, and then they interpreted the results and provided us some real-world context. Another example is zebras and lions in Africa. This cadet group took this real-world data, was able to transform it, solve, and interpret, going through the process that we teach them here at USMA. So how do we deal with grading this and maintain our scope over the course of 130 different projects and 8 instructors? Well, we asked them to look into 3 categories, data, complexity, and creativity. So if they were making up data or just didn't have data, if they had complexity of first order, or if they pulled a model directly from a textbook, then they didn't score as high on those different categories. But if they were able to find some data, increase the complexity to second order or 2x2 system, and add some terms, they were able to gain a point, so to speak. And then finally, if they were able to gather time series data, make a third or higher order system, or a 3x3 system, or add 3 or more terms, then they were able to earn 2 points for each category. This allowed us to calibrate our grading. We kind of showed how this worked for each of our maths. And we were able to give instructors, based off of how many points the cadets earned, how hard they had to grade. If you earn about 3 points and perfectly execute, then you get 100 on the project. One of the other things that was great for our term in project is we allowed cadets to use the SIMIODE competition, SCUDEM, in order to use that as their final project. So we had cadets teams that participated, and we offered them extra credit if they decided to participate and performed well. We had 14 teams participate. We had 3 outstanding, 10 meritorious, and 1 successful. They were able to then take the results of their SCUDEM presentations and adapt them to using the USMA math modeling process to give a term end project. So what are some of the challenges we experienced this semester? Well, one of the challenges we had was finding the right fit for each group. A lot of our groups had issues with trying to bite off more than they can chew. They saw a problem and they said, I want to go attack this. And while it was interesting, sometimes it was a little beyond the scope of what the cadets were able to do. Sometimes it wasn't challenging enough. So a lot of our instructors had to really help the cadets find the right fit. One of the other challenges we had for the project was the idea of cadets gathering data and then using that data to describe change over time. So we had to pose the question then, is this a model that's describing a differential equation, or is this a statistics problem? And we had groups that had to recalibrate what they were going to do for a project based off that question. One of the other things that we struggled with in the semester was timing all the associated learning outcomes. Cadets are extremely busy here at the Academy, and our class had a lot of different assignments. We had homework that was due daily and also a problem set due weekly. They had tech labs where they got to enhance their Mathematica skills. We also had 3 exams throughout the semester and a final exam. And then we had the MADs and project touch points throughout the semester. This was a lot of different graded events for the cadets to deal with. And it's important that we tried to space it out. So some weeks were heavier than others, but for the most part, we tried to make sure that cadets never felt overwhelmed at any specific point. The other thing is we tried to balance the workload on our instructors. The instructors had to grade all the above. They also had 2 interim reports that they had to do for each project. Instructors had to grade presentations and a final report. And so this is a lot of grading on the instructors. And even though there's only 2 to 3 sections, there's still a lot of work for our instructors. And so that was important that we tried to minimize the amount of simultaneous grading that the instructors were having to do. To kind of wrap up with why we teach modeling here at the Academy and why it's so important to us. The bottom line is we want to build cadets who are able to solve important problems. We think modeling helps instill them with that ability to pursue knowledge and solve problems. I often tell my cadets that a decade from now, I know you're not going to remember all the math that I taught you. But the goal of this class should not be to be perfect at the math, but rather to develop the skills to be a better critical thinker and a better problem solver. We think that modeling challenges students by forcing them to adapt what they learn to more advanced concepts. And we also think that modeling has an ability to increase their interest in trying to become researchers at an early age in the undergraduate programs. We have a big emphasis here at the Academy on cadets doing undergraduate research. And this is one of the tools that we can use to help increase cadet interest in trying to research a problem. Now, not every cadet becomes a STEM major, but we think that the skills taught in our modeling course are valuable regardless of the discipline that they choose. One of the things our dean often says is we're not trying to teach our cadets what to think, but rather how to think, how to become a better critical thinker, and how to be the problem solver that the Army needs moving forward into the future. We know that our cadets benefit from the math courses that they take here. We have intellectually stimulating discussions in the class. And I believe that our course does a good job of teaching the cadets how to think. I appreciate everybody's time today. That concludes my brief. I'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Thank you.